Thanks for tuning in. Join me today as I take you through my Sansui AU-9900 integrated amplifier, repair, restoration, and bench testing. If you enjoy vintage audio equipment, you've come to the right spot. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell, as well as giving me a big thumbs up if you like this video, and share it with others. There is a risk of serious injury or death from electrical shock working on this equipment. If you're not comfortable with working on the equipment, please do not take the cover off and consult a professional. This Sansui AU-9900 repair and restoration video is a remake. A few months ago, I did a 4-part video on my AU-9900. There's a part 1 video, a part 2 video, a part 3 video, a part 4 video, which was called the final chapter. And I looked at that and I thought it was done well. I think anybody restoring a Sansui AU-9900 should look at all 4 parts. And I've put the links down below in the description for those of you who want to see more detail. But to be honest, those 4 parts were 1 hour and 13 minutes and 14 seconds, broke up into 4 parts. I don't think many of you watched them all. I don't think I would, unless I owned a Sansui AU-9900. So what I've done, I've condensed those 4 parts into one video where you can sit down with a cup of coffee, you can sit down with a beer, whatever your favorite beverage is, and I think it's more enjoyable for the average person to watch. So I've removed the 2 top covers. You'll notice I still have all of the knobs on the front. I haven't done anything else except taking the 2 top covers off to take a look. What I think I'll do in this unit, and there's no right, no wrong. A lot of times I would take these knobs off now and move this faceplate out of the way. But the way this unit is set up, I'm able to come up here to the top and I can see, looks like a power supply module. You see a screw there. That looks like that will probably pull right on out of there. And also over here is the equalizer assembly, the Phono section of this AU-9900. So I'm going to go after both this Phono assembly here and also this power supply assembly that's right down in here. So I've got both of the assemblies loose. Now all we've got to do, we just pull this wire out here, and now this guy's loose. Our preamp power supply and our equalizer board, our phono board's out. So that's good, right? So we can work on those now. Okay, now with those 2 assemblies out of the way, we'll work on those. You know, we're going to change the components out of them. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall them and give them a try. Those 2 assemblies we took off, I can work with them right here in front of me. So that makes it pretty easy. Okay, I'm going to do the 2570 equalizer board, which is the phono board first. We're going to change the electrolytic capacitors out. All right, back at it. What I've done is what I would normally do. I just wanted to show you in the beginning how I got started, but now what I've done, I've gotten the other capacitors that I'm going to need to do the job. So I'll get them. I've gotten them out of the bags. I got them sitting right here, so this makes this hopefully go a little bit quicker. So there you have it. We've got the two bipolars changed out. We've got the 4 electrolytics changed out here at the top. We went ahead and put in film capacitors down below here that replaced the 2 electrolytics. So we're pretty much done with this guy, and we're going to move to the power supply board. I've got the Sansui 2568 power supply assembly that I'm now going to replace electrolytic capacitors in. I think we're about ready to go here. We'll get her hooked back up and see and try out both this board and the equalizer board that we did, and then do a quick test on them. Alrighty, we've got the equalizer mounted back in. Power supply. So that's ready to go, and as I said, what we do, we're going to power it up and just make sure it's still working before we go on. I've just hooked up a CD player here on the test bench. We just want to try her out before we go on. Let's come over here to the power switch. We got the protector in red, which is normal, right? And then I just heard the speaker relay, so that's a good start. Let me just tell you, it's working. So we can move on to the next step. Okay, now it's time to take the bottom cover off of this Sansui AU-9900. Okay, here I can see this is the 2567 protector board. It looks like another board that we can get at. Unhook this board, this protector board, and again it looks like if we get the cables out of her and we undo, it looks like there's probably 8 screws. This board will pull right out. I'm going to start doing this 2567 assembly and get the old electrolytics changed out. The 2567 protector assembly did come right out after removing those 8 screws. Change out the capacitors on the protector board now. The new capacitors put in, and it's about time to go ahead and reinstall the protection board. Now that the 2567 protection board has been reinstalled, what do we always try to do if we can? Best thing to do is what? Give it a try and make sure everything's still working before we go on. 9900 on its side. As I said, I've got my CD player hooked up here. So let's power it up and let's give it a shot here and see what happens. So here we go. Well, we got our protector light, which is normal. And I heard that distinctive click. Let's give her a try. Well, it certainly sounds like it, but I'll check it a little bit closer than that and make sure all's well. Then we'll move on to the next assembly. We're going to work on the F-2580 driver assembly next. That's this assembly right down here. First of all, you can see you've got to the driver unit these connectors that go right up here to where the power transistors are. So that looks like that unhooks. What we're trying to get at is apparently under this cover, the driver unit. So I'm going to go ahead and take the screws out of that. We just have this one connector that looks like he'll pull right out. So let me do that. Yeah. Okay, got the AU-9900 back on its side after we took the cover off at the top of the driver assembly to see what we had. We unhooked that one cable. So we're good to go here, right? 6 or 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We undo this screw. I dropped it in the chassis, right? We'll get her. I see her, actually. We'll get her. That's another thing, right? It just happens. Good thing it's on its side. Didn't have far to fall, right? I've even picked these things up and shook them trying to find a screw. So that guy's right there too. So we'll get him. This feels pretty darn loose. Don't it? Is that going to be it? Well, what do you know? Well, whoever designed this, that's pretty darn easy, huh? I wish it was all that easy. We've got a couple, we've got some wire soldered on the back, but holy smokes, right? I've got this thing right out in my hand. Go ahead and replace the capacitors we need to do on here. I'll get some capacitors together and you know, we'll do the driver card work. I've got the capacitors together for the 2580 driver board. Once again, on this assembly, like in the other assemblies that we've been working on, the larger capacitors have this glue down here right at the base of them. And this was done when they flow soldered the boards. It kept these parts in place and wouldn't allow them to shift around. X-Acto knife worked real well. Don't have to do anything crazy. You just break, you just get in there and you break up this glue a little bit. We got a little wiggle in her. You see that? And that's a good thing, right? When we go on the other side to unsolder it. So what you can do too, this is another option. I showed you with a Hacko 808 desoldering tool. What a nice tool that is, right? To unsolder these larger capacitors and smaller ones too. So I'm going to try here a different method. I'm going to just, you know, assume that you don't have a desoldering tool. And what you do is you go in here, as we just did, and loosen these capacitors up enough so you can wiggle them around. So it gives you a good feeling they're fairly loose. And what you can do is just put your thumb, you know, on the lead that you're going to remove. There's two leads here on these capacitors, right? Just push on it a little bit. Don't get too crazy, right? Hope I can show you this. Let me get my camera a little better. Yeah, maybe that's good. And you see how these are both bent over flat. I don't know if you can see that or not, but they are. They're not just straight down in like a lot of the components are straight in. They put these in, bent the pins, and then glued them to hold them in place. So what we're going to try to do is heat this up, and at the same time I'm going to be pulling. Not pulling, I should say not pulling, but pressing this direction. So let's try that and see if we can get this one pin out. And make sure I'm showing it on my camera. I'm looking at the camera. I don't want to glare you out because I got to get right here. So can I do that? Let's try it. Okay, I got it hot and I pulled it right out. All right, can you see that here? Now normally I'd use my desoldering gun, right? But I know a lot of you guys don't, so I want to show you another method of how to get these out, and usually safely. You just got to make sure you get that glue loose. But I hope you can see that one pin is out now, right? And so what are we going to do on the next? Now that the one pin's out, we can do the same thing with the other one, right? We can just pull him right out, or hopefully we can. So I'm going to try to get this so you can see it again. Hopefully I'm on camera and it's not all glared out. But I'm going to, let's see, hold this guy down and heat him. And now I'm pulling on him. And there he just came out in my hand. I don't know if you saw that or not, but he came right on out in my hand. Now, you know, like I say, there is no right or wrong. Everybody does rework on these units differently. The whole thing is, are you successful? Kind of like a guitar player, right? There's some people that the way they hold a guitar, they shouldn't be able to play, but they're damn good, right? So it works for them. I just wanted to show you another method. Okay, and it's off to the races here. Let's get this board. Get the electrolytic capacitors changed out of here. These are, you know, approaching 45 years old. You know, I mean, that's just above and beyond how long they should go. This board was pretty easy to get out. You know, just a few wires here on the back, and she's ready to go. I think now I'll pull out the heatsink and power transistor assemblies. Well, I put the driver assembly back in right now. I think I'll take these guys out and service them. I've got the whole unit. I just took the whole unit out, so that's nice. That came out quite easily, right? It looks like this unit has the original Sanken output transistors, which is again nice, right? Nice to have. Now we'll get the other one out of the chassis. Out of this guy. I'm going to reseat these original Sanken output transistors. You know, once again, it's like everything else. These guys are approaching 45 years old. Wouldn't it be nice for them to make it another 45 years? And they may. I'll remove each transistor. There's 4 transistors per channel, total of 8. And I'll install a new mica insulator, and we'll also put in some new thermal joint compound. There's 2 screws. You're going to pull these 2 screws, and this transistor is going to come right out in my hand. Unscrew these screws that you can probably see there hanging on the end of my screwdriver. It's down in this heat sink a little bit, so you got to kind of squeeze it. You know, you could put a screwdriver down under here and it would come out easier, but you got more of a chance of scraping up the heat sink, right? Again, not a horribly big deal, but just soon not do it. And, well, There she is. There's a little mica insulator in here, and over the years, it kind of becomes part of the heatsink. You know, and I'm pulling on it here with my pick a little bit. I don't know if you can kind of see it coming up, and then bang, there she is. What we want to do first, and then give it a moment to dry, we're going to clean the heatsink with some alcohol. And I'm going to take these power transistors, this side, and just clean them up. All 8 power transistors have been reseated with new insulators and new thermal compound. That new thermal compound now can get in those little imperfections in the metal, both in the heatsink itself and also in the transistor case. So it just transfers the heat a lot better. So we're about ready to reinstall them now. I'll now reinstall the driver assembly as well as the 2 heatsink power transistor assemblies. So all 3 of these are ready to go back in, and then we'll hook it up and give it a test. It goes back together just like it came apart. Remember, all the cables were marked, so that makes it easier. And you just want to double check your work once you get everything in there. Okay, we've got the left and right power output transistor and heatsink assemblies back in. We've got the driver card back in, and what are we going to do? We're going to give it a try, right? After we've done some work, make sure everything's still working. I'm going to head and flicker on. Let's see what happens. Well, our protector light, like, should be. Ah, went green. That's good, huh? You can hear that speaker relay. That's always a sweet sound in an old piece of vintage audio equipment. See, oh, what do you know? Well, once again, we will play 1 second of that. I'll listen to it a little bit more than you guys will. Make sure all is all right. So I think we're good to go. So we're going to have to remove the faceplate and the knobs, of course, and do the work here that's in the front of the unit. I'll take all the knobs off the front. Okay, I've gotten all the knobs off, so we're free. You know, the faceplate is free from the chassis now. So I'm holding the faceplate in one hand. There she is, and there's your AU-9900 chassis in front of us. We're going to work on these inside assemblies here that are toward the front of the unit. It'll help us if we loosen those up. Freeing these guys up have given us a little more room to maneuver and keep, you know, evaluating where you're at and what you should do next. Okay, I'm going to now take out the 2573 assembly. Sometimes you got to move stuff around. This one feels like it's loose. I can't quite, it is. Is this going to come out for us? Pretty much, huh? We're got a few side. Well, here comes this guy. That's nice. This is, remember, we were working on this guy. This is where it looked like it had 2 sides to it. The push button, the guy with the push button switches on it. So that's nice. We got him out. So he's loose. This stuff here was a little more tight, wasn't it? We got a pile over here and a pile over here, and it wasn't quite as easy to get out of, let's say, our protection board or our heat sinks and power transistors or our driver board. All that stuff came out pretty easy, and up top the power supply. And so this came out fine. It actually came out quite nice. It just was tighter. It's a tighter spot in there. So we'll get to work changing components. Before I change the components out in each of the assemblies, what better time than to clean all the controls, right? I mean, this stuff is all out here on the table. We can get in there and clean those controls so they'll operate properly for several more decades. Probably the biggest mistake when people are cleaning controls, after spraying deoxit into them, they just don't exercise them enough. Once again, I know this will sound ridiculous, but you've got to do these back and forth and back and forth. You've got to do them 50 times to be sure. Could you maybe just spray something in there and turn it once or twice and get lucky? Sure you could. But the first time that you disassemble a unit like this to this level and you get it back together and you've still got a noisy, let's say in this case I'm doing the volume control, right? And you've got a little static, you know, that's like a normal thing that you'll have in these old units. And so you get in here, you clean it, you put it back together, and you still got static. And 98% of the time, that's going to be because you didn't exercise these controls enough. Okay, I'm going to start changing capacitors on the F2573, which is the filter circuit board. So let's get started. Okay, we've got the two 3.3 microfarad bipolar caps changed out. So we'll go to the next one. This is the 2576, which is the tone, bass, and treble board. We've got the four bipolar capacitors changed out. The 2576 bass treble controls all set to go. We'll work over here closer to the chassis. One's the F2574 buffer amp, and the other, this one here, is the F2575 tone mid-range control board. And we'll go on to the next one, which will be the 2574 buffer amp assembly. Got the 2574, the four capacitors changed out, two electrolytics, and two bipolars. So I think we're about ready here to start reassembling. We've changed out our capacitors from the boards at the front of the AU-9900, and we're ready to fill this empty space back in again. Gonna try to make a connector sandwich here. Remember the mid, this is kind of the way it goes more or less, right? When it's up in the when it's in the chassis. Bass and treble are on this one. The mid-range is on this one. There's the mid. I've got the mid in the front. I think I've got the, hey, all three popped in. All right, I've got everybody snugged up there in the front of the chassis. We want to give it one final look, make sure we've got everything back in neatly. We've got everything tightened up at the front, and we're going to give it a shot and then see if it's still working. And you should always do this when you work on a section. This is our volume. Let's see what happens. Well, once again, as you know, real quick test there. The first thing I want to do is to get the faceplate back on the unit and get the knobs back on and move on from there. Now I'll put the 5 screws back in the faceplate and get the knobs put back on, and then we can move on. I've reinstalled the faceplate and the knobs. Put one lead, one on the NPN transistor, one on the PNP, and we're going to measure the idle current. Actually, we're going to measure voltage, but we can do a little bit of math and figure out what that breaks, what we need to see when we read the voltage across these two emitter resistors, what that breaks down to in current, which is usually what you're going to see in a service manual. I'm going to use these little grabbers. You know, these little grab leads. They open up. You can kind of see, I hope, maybe not, as I push this down like a plunger, these little 2 pins come out, and when you release it, they grab. And so you can see it's all insulated. If something does happen here, it falls off, you've got a lot better chance that it's not going to short something out on you. I've got the 2 leads on. You can see maybe it's hooked here to the emitter resistor of one of the NPNs, and then we've got the other one hooked to the PNP transistor, again, the emitter. From experience, I can tell you, when you start adjusting the pots, there's a pot for the left channel and the right channel for the bias current. And you will never, ever get these perfect. And that's one thing I think people have to overcome, that look, if you're about where you should be, you start moving that pot, and now you gotta wait who knows how long. So 10 minutes later, we've moved up about 1 millivolt. This is how this is. See, if you would have just powered it up and said, well, I guess that's what my bias current is. You've just got to give these amplifiers a little bit of time, most of the time, because how are you going to use this piece of equipment? You're going to just turn it on and for 3 minutes and turn it off? No. You're probably going to turn it on, have it on for a few hours. So you need to let it just sit here for a little bit to see where it's going to stabilize at. I let the AU-9900 sit up on the bench for about an hour and a half. The bias looks very good, so we'll move on from here. Now I've moved the AU-9900 on its other side, because now we can test the DC offset. I've got the meter probes into the left and right speaker outputs. Okay, the one channel is about 5 millivolts. The other channel is very close to 0. You know, we want it as close to 0 as possible. We'll let it warm up here a minute. Again, if you've got a DC offset that's this low, don't mess with it. Just don't mess with it. It's great. We don't have to get in there and do any adjusting at all. It's time to take one final look inside the bottom of the chassis. We're going to go ahead and put the bottom back on. It's been a while since we were able to do that, but we make sure everything's run, all the wires are back in the channels, and just give it a quick eyeball to make sure everything looks okay. It's time to get the two top panels on. Same thing, just take a quick look. Make sure everything looks neat. I've got the top two covers on. Okay, I've got everything hooked up. These are coming from the speaker outputs on the AU-9900 and over to the load resistors. We're up to over 6 watts right now. The amp's just running continuous into the 8 ohm load. The difference between the channels there, that's very close together. What I'm going to do now is just walk away from the amplifier for a while. It's the left channel's producing 33.5 watts per channel into 8 ohms. The other right channel's 33.3, which again, the amp's tracking very good. So between the two channels, and that's what you'd like to see. So that gives me a good feeling that the preamp and the amp sections are working together well. So we're going to let it sit here, and we're going to let it burn in, literally. We'll see how warm she gets. I'm going to leave her here for probably an hour or so, and let her just sit here and warm up, and then we'll do some more testing. Just under its rated power. This is about 75 watts continuous at 0.06. As far as the distortion goes, there's 78. And now see, she's just over 80.5, and there she is at 0.06. So I mean, the left channel is, easily is beating its spec, and this is really putting some pressure on the amp. We're at 61. This is on the right channel. We're about 0.05. We just went over. Yep. There she is. I mean, she's at see, if we get up about 82, the distortion goes to about 0.1, but right here at its rated, 80 watts a channel, I mean, look at that, 0.06. I mean, solid as can be. And I mean, this is, again, she's wide open here. There's no way, if you're doing 80 watts continuous, your speakers are blown, right? So there she is. I just moved it up a hair more to 81. You can tell there she's going to start to go over the tip over here, but that's pretty darn impressive for a 45-year-old piece of electronics, right? I mean, it's like she just came out of the box, and that's the thing I find so appealing about this stuff. And I'm not scared to do this. I mean, I'm not scared that, oh my God, I'm going to blow it up. No, because we just went through it, just restored it, and I wouldn't do this to it every day, obviously. I mean, I'm going to hook it up and listen to music with it. But it's just nice to know that this piece of equipment that's 45 years old can meet its specs like it was just taken out of the box, in 1975. I hope that you enjoyed my Sansui AU-9900 repair and restoration. If you did, I'd really appreciate a big thumbs up down below. For you non-subscribers, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more of them, please subscribe. And as always, thank you so much to my present subscribers. You all have a good day.